J'ai l'impression de me retrouver dans la plénière.
Ooh, it's like being in plenary, isn't it? When we're just given 2.5 minutes. And we used to be very happy to have 2.5 minutes. Now, in the introduction, our chair said that the Economic and Monetary Union was the very heart of our policy here in Europe and part of the day-to-day life of European citizens. Well, I don't really see that really reflected in some of the presentations that were made, particularly the very long presentation that we've been given basically on economic issues and a great deal of pessimism, in fact, in terms of the future. People predicting the bankruptcy of the system. But we analyse the Eurozone and the huge divergences that exist at the level of different countries. The question is, does this give us any real solid basis to move towards the future? These presentations give me a little bit of the impression that the management of the crisis was left to the national level. We had the councils, we had the European semesters, but actually the role of the European Parliament was very limited. And the other analysis that I have is that to have free elections in a country is a little bit of a problem for those people who want to put things back on proper footing, which surprised me a little bit. We didn't really talk much about the European budget and how it affects the national budgets. For example, the impact of the structural funds, which was mentioned at least in one of the presentations. A lot of differences underlined between France and Germany. I don't know if that was very useful. So the question I end up asking myself is really the question of the role of the European Parliament, which has been, of course, strengthened by the Lisbon Treaty, in terms of our economic surveillance responsibilities. The ECB's got to give reports to the Parliament. We finally talked about the fact that there was a democratic role for the supervision of the banking union, which has now been set up. But and there was some debate on the role of the European Parliament in comparison to the role of the national parliaments. That debate seemed to me to be a little bit as if it was tending towards giving power back to national parliaments, a kind of renationalisation of the debate. But we, of course, need to remember subsidiarity and the importance of, that makes me think of the first directive on the role of women in the board administration in large businesses, where there were 5 parliaments who wanted the decision to be taken at national level. But actually we decided it was a European issue. So I think the debate on subsidiarity has got to be a real debate, actually. We have to find always the right level to take the right decision to be as efficient as possible. That's what really at the heart of the subsidiarity debate. We also talked a lot here this morning about the way the Eurozone works at a rather confidential level, behind closed doors, between the member states, and I think that leads us also to a great deal of difficulty. And I've got a significant regret here, because we didn't really talk very much about the European social model, or not enough. It was mentioned, and when it was mentioned, we talk about the impact on national populations. We talk about, for example, the extension of the pension age. We never talk about the model as being a contribution to our citizens, for example, in terms of increasing their purchase power. So it always seemed to me that this debate of the social model is a secondary issue inside the debate, especially when we compare the whole issue of austerity and saving money. So the impression that I have is that the citizen, even if it isn't always true, there is in fact a real diminution in their support. we get the impression that the savings are always being made on the back of the citizen. People said we had to adapt to the new global environment, the new global situation. But we kept pushing that off a little bit. We really would need to have the unions here to give some contribution to this debate. So I'm a bit frustrated by some of that debate this morning on that particular issue of the social model. Because I think that, although we mentioned it with regard to Greece, that what's happening in the European population at the moment is a kind of distrust is developing in terms of Europe. I'm talking about my own country, France, when the decisions are being taken to Europe. People keep saying Brussels. We never talk about the European Parliament or the Council. We just say that Brussels has decided. And that leads to the significant increase in Euroscepticism and, of course, the strength of the Front National in the last election shows that. And that also leads to a situation, we see it in France and other countries, a kind of anti-European populism. You know, people are now starting to say, actually, it'd be much, much better if we left the euro, left Europe and became a nation again. I mean, it's extremely difficult to go back to the citizen and counter this debate, because increasingly we see that the whole European debate is a technical debate. It's no longer a political debate, in fact, for the citizen. And I hope that in future meetings we might have a slightly more optimistic debate about ways in which we might work against that. Something I didn't hear this morning is this whole idea of having support and optimism for the European project.
Merci. Bon, se levanta la...
So now that's the end of the session. Thank you very much.